If you do webinars or sales presentations, or to be fair, even if you have a video sales letter, the majority of the stuff or the kind of information that's online out there about video sales letters and webinars and whatever else all focuses on like the hook or how to do a pitch or how I close like 30% of the room or whatever. But what very few people forget is the thing that takes up the majority of the time on the webinar, which is you actually giving people value, because at the end of the day, they've signed up because you've said to them, I'm going to teach you how to do X, Y, and Z. But what most people do is they focus on the introduction, they focus on the pitch, and what they do is that they lose the majority of the people in the middle. Now, I don't mean lose them as in like their retention goes off or people actually leave the call. I mean, they lose them to they're watching it on their computer and then they'll pull up their phone and then they'll start going on their phone or whatever. But in this video, I'm going to show you how to fix this and how to actually build your training section to not overwhelm people, to keep people engaged, and how to seemingly transition from intro and the mechanisms and the close, keeping people in the state that you want them to be in the entire time to get them to buy from you at the end or to book a call or whatever call to action you have at the end of your sales presentation or webinar. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is why most webinar training sections fail and how to fix it. Now, if you don't know who I am, my name's Charlie McCormack. I do webinars for multiple clients in multiple different niches, in multiple different industries, almost every single week. So we are actively doing this stuff in and out, and I actually have earned insights on what has worked for us. And I'm not just watching another person's YouTube video and being like, oh, this is how you should do it. So let me talk about what most people typically do when they're building their webinars, right? And if you build your own webinars or you have a copywriter building their webinars, ask them how they actually distribute their time when they're working on the script, whether they're working on the presentation. It will probably be weighted similar to this. So they will probably spend about 50% of the time, the total allocated time that they spend working on this webinar, on the pitch or on the close. They will probably spend about 30% of their time working on the introduction, and they will probably spend about 20% of their time working on the training and the mechanisms. Now, why is it split like this? And I'm going to tell you why it's split like this, because this is what I was told when I first started writing webinars for my clients. So the reason that the pitch is 50% is because the pitch is obviously the thing that makes you the money. It's the big finale. It's the point in which you don't want to be caught making a rookie error, or you don't want to have bad copy, because if you're presenting it and then you realize the copy is terrible like halfway through, you're going to be like, shit, we're already too late and we've got a room full of people who are now no longer going to buy from us. Or you don't want to make sure that you have any bad sales tactics. So what people do is they will spend 50% of the time on the pitch because they view this as the thing that makes them the money. They think that the close is the be all end all. However, they also know that the introduction is important. So they will spend the second most amount of time, maybe about 30%, on the introduction. Because I mean, if you can't get them engaged, then you can't do anything. You can't even teach them. You can't close them in the end. If they click onto the webinar, they watch 2-3 minutes of the introduction and then they decide, actually, do you know what, this isn't for me. So people hyperfixate on, oh, you need to get the frame right, or you need to open the loops, or you need to make sure that this is for them, or you need to make sure that they know everything about you and your story so they feel relatable and everything. So this is what everyone does. They go nuts on the pitch and on the introduction. And then when it comes to the training and the mechanisms, this is like the middle child. It's the part where they're just like, yeah, we'll just train them, just put like some bits and bobs in there, and we can give them a little bit of value here, and then we'll just make sure that we get them to the close, right? It is exactly what you don't want to be doing. So the training and the mechanisms is the middle child. It's the part in the middle that when people present on webinars, they often unconsciously will skip through this bit. You'll see them on the presentation go tap, 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 tap. You can hear them clicking their keyboard, tap, 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 because they're unconsciously worried that people are going to drop off before the pitch, right? So this is how people wait in actually creating the presentation. But when in reality, if we look at the time that is actually spent on the call of the webinar, like if you were going to go back onto your webinar and you were to actually say, like, right, how long did the intro take me? Probably about 20 minutes. How long did the pitch take me? Probably about 20 minutes. Average webinar is probably just like maybe over an hour or so. So this is what it looks like in the actual distribution, right? The mechanisms and stuff are the part that take up the bulk of the time on the call, but most people treat it as an afterthought. Just throw some value to them and hopefully they'll buy from us at the end. Now, why is this a dangerous game to play, right? So what happens is the unconscious skip is one of the first things that happens, right? So you will see people, if you might do this on your own webinars, you might want to watch them back and have a look. But if not, you might want to look at other people's webinars, and you will see that on these webinars, they are frantically flying through the training section. And like, you see these people and they're barely able to catch a breath, and they'll start saying things like, just stick with me here, guys. Like, oh, you guys are getting so much more value, get your pen and paper down. And guys, you need to write this down. But what's happening is people are doing this because in the back of their mind, you're worried about retention, right? You're skipping through the slides because you think that if you take too long on the training, then people aren't going to be there for the pitch, or you're worried about people leaving because they need to go to work or whatever they're doing, and you're worried about this. So you try and get through it as quickly as possible. So when the pitch comes, you unconsciously feel like you're fucking the audience over, right? And the audience will be able to smell it in your energy. So if you've ever joined a webinar and you actually expected to learn something on it, and the introduction's 20 minutes long, and you're like, yeah, the framing's feeling kind of right. And then they go through the training and they teach you things that you already knew. So let's say, for example, you were writing about a business opportunity, and you would just say to people, like, let's say the business opportunity is sales, right? Let's say, like, what is sales? And you're like, all right, sales is this, and you sell for online companies, and then you start pitching them. They haven't been taught anything, and you feel like you're fucking them over because you're skipping through the slides. The second thing that can happen, this is what happens if you teach too much, right? So if you're the kind of person who is kind of the opposite, so you've got one side of the spectrum is the people who do the training too quickly, right? And then you have the people who do way too much training because they think like, oh, we need to give loads of value. It actually ends up having the opposite effect, right? When you do a webinar, you want people to be sold on three things. I got this from Ben Bader. I'm not going to claim it as my own, right? You need to sell them on you as the person selling the business opportunity or whatever it is that you're selling. They need to be sold on themselves, and they need to be sold on the product. Now, they can't be sold on themselves if you leave the audience feeling overwhelmed, if you leave them feeling like what you're teaching them is too complicated for them to do themselves. That is not the state you want them to be in, because it's not a state that's conducive to people buying from you. But you could probably snap someone out of the feeling of being overwhelmed. But what you can't do is if they fully just don't understand it. If you give them way too much stuff and you're using all your big fancy words because you've been doing whatever you've been doing for ages, and they lose a grasp of what it actually is, they won't buy from you. Or the third thing that can happen is that the prospects actually do understand it, right? So you don't leave them in a state where they feel like they don't understand it. They do understand it, and you've given them a ton of value. They are going to go and do it for themselves, right? It doesn't mean that they're going to succeed doing it for themselves. What it means is you've given them so much information that they feel confident enough to go and do it themselves. Now, this isn't a terrible thing, but what you have probably left out here is that there is no clear gap between what you have taught them for free and what will be inside the offer that you pitch at the end. So you make the mistake of going too tactical. So you're saying things like, here is exactly how you do this, and you might share your screen and show them exactly how you do what you tell people to do in the course, as opposed to keeping it as like a high level overview of what it is that you're talking about, giving them enough value that they think, this applies to me. I could do this. This is true. And you open their eyes to what is possible. So you're still teaching them. But when you teach tactical steps like, oh, you do A, and then you do B, and then you do C, and then you get to the desired outcome that you're trying to sell them on at the end, they think, even if it's not correct, they will think that they have everything that they need. But when you implement like the framework behind it and you get them to a place where they understand it, as opposed to telling them how to do it, they want to know more about the implementation. It's the whole thing where it's like, oh yeah, give for free, give the knowledge for free and sell the implementation. I think that's a Hormozy thing. So how to actually teach people on a webinar. Now, the first thing that I do whenever I'm doing any presentation, whether I'm writing the script, whether I'm coming into someone's existing webinar, the first thing that I will do is reduce. So let's say that you were selling a make money online closer biz opportunity, right? If you don't know what a biz op is, it's a business opportunity. So let's say you were helping people to land roles and then also learn how to close. So like that could be a good offer. You're a complete beginner. I'm going to show you how to get on the ladder, and then we're going to show you how to actually get good at it, right? So I kind of brain dumped like a list of like multiple things that you could train them on in terms of how to make money online as a closer, right? So you could teach them how to find people to sell for. You could show them how to outreach to them. You could then show them how to follow up on the outreach if they ignore you, how to send a loom, how to send a CV, how to conduct yourself in the sales interview process, what happens when you actually get in, how to use the CRM, how to use the sales script, and then actually teaching someone how to close. So teaching them high-level psychology and persuasion. Now that list there that I have just rolled off, right, is a list of 10 different things that they are actually going to need, like, as a base level to make it work. And that's a surface level as well. Like I said there, you couldn't teach someone how to close on 200 webinars unless they actually get on the phone with someone and actually try and close someone. So the first step in the reduction phase is to kind of map out everything that they need to know and then simply distill it into 3 to 5 core high level mechanisms. But what you want to make sure here when you're picking the 3 to 5 things is that what you teach them naturally creates a bridge into whatever you're going to pitch at the end. So this should be 3 to 5 things that highlight and solve problems that they have right now. So it's kind of like the low ticket funnel theory where you say, we'll solve one problem for them for $27 on the front end. And then we might have a one-time upsell or something else, or the high ticket thing might then solve the rest of the problems. So if I was to do this for the Make Money Online, Close a Business Opportunity example, then I would make sure that it kind of looks something like this. So let's say we're selling to complete beginners, right, on this webinar. And what we want to do is we want to help them find people to sell for, right? Because that's the first thing. If they can't find someone to sell for, they're never going to be able to sell anything, right? So how to find people, like Instagram outreach, give them how to find people on Instagram and give them an outreach template. Easy. That's like problem 1 solved, problem 2 solved. How the hiring process works. So someone actually replies to you. What does the interview process look like? How to prep? And then also maybe some basic selling principles. So then they come away from it thinking like, oh yeah, I'm a closer, and they're sold on it. And they think, yeah, this makes sense for me. I understand the vehicle. I understand the person. I understand the opportunity. And naturally, from there, what you could do is you could transition from using those things as the high level mechanisms into your pitch by saying, but you won't become good at sales unless you sell, and we practice with you inside of our offer, etc., etc., etc. You can see how there I've set up the pitch. And once you've distilled it down into your 3 to 5 core mechanisms, right, we then want to get rid of the worry that people aren't going to be engaged, right? Because this is where you start going through it quickly. And even if we distill it, what you don't want to do is then distill it and then go through it equally as quick. So rather than telling them that this is super valuable, this is something that I got from Jason Fladley, and we want to show them that it's possible. So remember before when I said that people will say things like, oh, this is really valuable, guys, you should be paying attention and whatever. Rather than saying that, we need to show them. So how do we actually do this in the training? So you've got your 3 to 5 mechanisms, and with each mechanism, you introduce it in the following way. So you introduce the mechanism. So you would have high level headline like, right, here's how you find people to sell for. What happens if they don't do or use said things? So where they are right now. So you could say to them, for example, how to find people to sell for. What happens if you're doing what you're doing right now? So for example, these people might have like private Instagram profiles, or their Instagram isn't optimized. So you could go straight from how to find people to sell for to, okay, so right now you don't want to outreach to anyone, and no one's probably going to hire you because your Instagram looks like X, Y, and Z. So the first thing you need to do is you need to sort that out. And then once you've sorted that out, then you can find people. So explain why it's valuable. You can say like, right, these people are all selling high ticket offers online. They're selling things from 5 to 10K. It's the usual sales guru type argument. And they explain how to apply it. So it's valuable because these people online are selling high ticket offers, and they're selling online, and you can work remotely for them. How to outreach them, how to apply it. Here's an outreach script or whatever. And you should be using case studies and testimonials throughout the teaching mechanisms to demonstrate the value of what you are teaching, right? So constantly be thinking, how can you address objections, or how can you add more social proof during the training? Because what most people will do is they will simply just train, and they will get people in a really good state in the introduction, right? So the introduction will set up some really nice frames. But if you're training for half an hour, that person's state has completely changed to a kind of note-taking kind of state, or feeling like they're being talked at, or feeling like they're not being actually taught anything. So then by the time you get to the pitch, it's evident that you have literally just gone from teaching them stuff to pitching them, because you haven't kind of created this constant bridge of, right, you're doing this at the moment, you're doing this wrong, so we're keeping people on their toes, we're keeping them engaged, and then we're showing them, here's how to do it, here's why it's valuable, here's the new mechanism. And if you actually make this change, right, so if you structure your arguments with 3 to 5 core mechanisms, you show them like where they are right now, or like a big thing that they're doing wrong at the moment they need to change. We show them the outcome, and then we give them a bit of a tactic on how to apply it. We are showing them and we are not telling them, right? And when you have it structured in this way and you don't need to worry about the engagement and you don't need to worry about people clicking off, you can then teach at a pace that lets the ideas actually sink in rather than just brushing over them and overwhelming the audience. And you get rid of this kind of ambient anxiety that you have when you usually do the training because you're rushing towards the pitch, because your training isn't actually keeping people engaged from the introduction through the training and into the pitch as one. Instead, you have this big block in the middle of what you're doing at the moment in your training. But if you replace it, 3 to 5 mechanisms, introduce the mechanisms properly, use social proof, use objections, make it clear as daylight to them, and let the important ideas sink in, you're going to keep them in that state all along. And this is a massive intangible as why you can have the best pitch in the world, but if people are unengaged and they're not in the state conducive to buying, then they're not going to buy, right? So what to do from here, right? I have a bunch of free stuff, right? So you can watch our full 90-minute masterclass where I show you exactly kind of how we do webinars, including a bit of more of an expansion on this kind of stuff. I have a free newsletter. You can get our webinar script. You can get my AI webinar prompt. Or if you want paid stuff, if you already run a webinar, then let's be your control. We'll write you a new presentation. We'll come in, we'll do the messaging, the funnel, everything, implement our system into your current webinar and beat it with a guarantee. Or if you don't have a webinar yet, let us build you one completely done for you. Hope you found this video valuable. Subscribe if you did. Join the newsletter if you want some free shit. And love you all lots. Bye-bye.